graduating this year, and one of the ladies at Schnucks asked him, "Are you excited about graduation?" And he said, "I just can't wait to start my life." And I said, "Son, stay where you are." No, it's not as easy. You got it easy. And sometimes it's refreshing, sometimes it's scary, but I go back to that excited high school graduation when I was with all my buds. I go to sitting with 1,000 more graduates getting an undergraduate degree at the University of Memphis, and then my mind goes then again to a very small, intimate group where I was awarded my Master's in Divinity degree, and each of those, I say that not to brag, but each of those marked a new beginning, if you will, in my life's journey. And I think back and I wonder if I knew, only if I knew now what I didn't know then, as time and experience truly is the greatest educator we can have about life. And we're going to look at maybe some of the choices we made over the next 3 weeks in this new sermon series called This Is My New Life. And we're going to look at some of the choices that we've made. And we're going to look at how the life that we're living now, and we're going to finish with the legacy that we leave behind once we're gone. And I want to say this is not a "you're a bad person, you need to change your ways" type of sermon series. But it's more of a reflecting on the blessings that we have in our life and how we learn and grow from our mistakes and how we can use the story of our life to inspire others and to focus on what's truly important in this life. So as a backdrop of this sermon series, we're going to go look back at the Old Testament book of Ruth. And first I would like for you, if you can, sometime next week, although you could do it right now, if you would, sometime next week, go back and read the entire book of Ruth. And if you are a slow reader like I am, it should take you literally about 7 minutes to read the whole book. There's only 4 chapters. But it's a very powerful, powerful story. And Ruth is located in the Old Testament right after Judges and before 1 Samuel, one of the prophets. So if you will, turn to me to the first chapter of Ruth as we begin. In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land. So a man from Bethlehem in Judea, together with his wife and his 2 sons, went to live for a while in the country of Moab. The man's name was Elimelech. And the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Aphrodites from Bethlehem, Judea, and they went to Moab to live there. Now Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. They married Moabite women. The name of Orpah and the other Ruth. And they lived there about 10 years. And both Mahlon and Chilion also died, and Naomi was left without her 2 sons and her husbands. We need to understand that we have, as previously stated, a godly man, Elimelech, and he's faced with a desperate decision to make for him and his family. There's a great famine in the land, and if he stays in Bethlehem, he and his family will surely die. Or the decision is to pack up everything and move to Moab. And now we need to understand that the Moabites hated the Israelites, and to say that was an understatement. And so the choice was to stay where you are and die, or take a risk and move, and you could be killed anyway. And we find out later in the story that this wasn't a good choice that he made. He should have stayed where he was at. But he figured it was the only choice he had for survival. But this decision was about survival. And what begins to unfold in this story is the fact that God is in the middle of our bad decisions, regardless if we are aware of it or not. You see, while in Moab, Elimelech dies. Naomi's sons marry Moabite women. And then both of her sons die. I mean, can you imagine Naomi's what-ifs during this time? I mean, she can't be mad at Eliab, for moving there because he's dead. I mean, and we all know what it's like to lose a loved one and that fog you're in for a little while. And how your life will never be the same. And even as she's still in that fog, both of her sons died. And as you'll see that God is working, though, during this whole time, even though she can't see it. Another thing we realize is we hear this story that God can work in spite of our bad decisions. I mean, they made a bad decision, okay, to move to Moab, but a bad decision they made a bad decision to allow their sons to marry Moabite women. Okay, but hear me closely. It wasn't a bad decision because of the ethnicity of the Moabite women. That's not it at all. But it's the simple fact that they married outside the Jewish faith into a religion where they worship many false idols. Okay, they had crossed over a line, if you will, of the one true God who says in the first commandments, have no other God before me. And it wasn't about their race. It wasn't about where they were from. It was about that they chose in their family, their wives, who studied and who in-laws and everything had many, many, many other gods besides the one true God. And we've all witnessed this. I mean, we've all witnessed and been divided over ideologies. I mean, we've all seen people make mistakes and be in relationships that are not healthy for them. I mean, that puts pressure on the entire family. You want to put pressure on your entire... Trust me, I brought home some real winners before I met Kelly. Ask my mom if that doesn't put pressure on the entire family. Bring home someone no one in the family likes and see if there is an added pressure. We understand what that is. I mean, we've all made bad decisions in our life. And even in our bad decisions, God can redeem them and redeem the efforts of our bad choices. It doesn't mean that it's over. And in a decade, Naomi has lost her husband and both of her sons. And again, this is not a God punishing thing. God is not punishing Naomi for her husband's choice and her children's choice. And don't read that into this, because remember, this is very, very hard times. All people were trying to just survive. There was a huge famine. It was not uncommon or abnormal that all the men at a young age died. So it's not a God punishing thing. It's just prompted Naomi to ask why. I mean, why is all this taking place? The first time I drove in downtown St. Louis, I saw something that was new to me. I'd been driving a while. I noticed, and I thought that it was pretty neat. I'm driving, there's cars backed up, and I see to my left a sign that says express lane. So I jump over in the express lane, and I am booking it. I'm excited. I'm saying, look at all them suckers on the highway. And I am doing 85, and I'm having a good time, and I think I have found the highway to heaven until that moment I saw my exit go by. And when I go to merge, I see a huge concrete barrier preventing me from going back. And it took me over 30 minutes to get off and double back, but I eventually got back on the right path, and I eventually got to where I was needing to go. But see, we all make bad choices. And I realize when we make bad choices, it's going to cost us something. Something. I mean, it may be time, it may be a job, it may be a relationship, it may be money, it may be energy, but something, it will cost us something when we make a bad decision. And no matter how far off we might have traveled off course, no matter how many times we might have seen our exit go by us and get into it, it is never too late to change our course. continue with verse 6. And when Naomi heard in Moab that the Lord had come to the aid of his people by providing food for them. See, bad choice. They should have stayed. Now there's food in Bethlehem. She and her daughters-in-law prepared to return home from there. With her two daughters-in-law, she left the place where she had been living and set out on the road that would take them back to the land of Judah. When Naomi said to her two daughters-in-law, "Go back, each of you, to your mother's home. May the Lord show you kindness as you have shown kindness to your dead husbands and to me. May the Lord grant that each of you will find rest in the home of another husband." And she kissed them goodbye, and they wept aloud and said to her, "We will go back with you to your people." But Naomi said, "Return home, my daughters. Why would you come with me? Am I going to have any more sons who can become your husbands? Of course not. Return home, my daughters. I am too old to have another husband. Even if I thought there was still hope for me, even if I had a husband tonight and then gave birth to two sons, would you wait until they grew up? Would you remain unmarried for them? No, my daughters. It is better for me than for you, because the Lord's hand has turned against me." At this they wept aloud again. Then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. We realize that in this story that God will lead us in our important choices if we let Him. You see, all choices we make begin in our minds and in our thoughts. Now there's plenty of food and prosperity back in Naomi gives her daughter-in-law an out. Daughters-in-law an out. She knows how rough it'll be for them in Bethlehem. She tries to make some sense to them. She outlined their future if they returned with her. And it's not very good. It's not very bright. And Orpah returned to her home. But look what Ruth does. "Look," said Naomi, "your sister is going back to her people and her gods. Go back with her." But Ruth replied, "Don't urge me to leave you or to turn my back from you. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. And may the Lord deal with me, but in ever so severely, if even death separates you and me." When Naomi realized that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped urging her. What a moment of compassion and loyalty and commitment. Ruth says, "I choose you over everything else. I choose you over everything else." And why did Ruth choose differently than Orpah? I'm not sure. But it's easy to surmise that Naomi loved Ruth. And that Ruth not only felt that love of her mother-in-law, but she felt something so much deeper. And maybe she witnessed Naomi's strength and resolve in times of tragedy and pain and heartbreak. I don't know. And maybe Ruth witnessed her incredible faith, even through it all, to still love and pray and rely on the one true God. I like to believe that maybe it was because Naomi showed Ruth the love of God. That Naomi knew that Ruth's decision was authentic. Ruth didn't just claim to love Naomi, but was willing to risk it all to follow her, to be with her. And we've all been burned, haven't we? We've all been burned by unauthentic or fake relationships. Somewhere in our life, we don't really know exactly what Ruth saw in Naomi that fueled her desire to follow her and Naomi's God. But it was authentic. And maybe she was following Naomi's example of risking it all for something better. Or relying our good and our bad.